All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jim Blair, the managing partner at Aberdeen Consulting. Joining me from the Aberdeen team is TJ Horner and Kyle Harritz. Kyle's going to be moderating the Q&A session, which will follow the presentation, and TJ will be moderating the chat, and he'll be here to answer and provide some technical input into the questions that you provide. Our inaugural session of CyberSmart Briefs is email phishing trends, what to look for. What is CyberSmart Briefs and why? CyberSmart Briefs is a monthly short-form content webinar. Each month, we'll present a 5-minute dive into a security topic, field your questions, and seek your input for future topics. We'll make these videos available on our website and at our YouTube channel so you can share with your team. The why. We exist to guide and protect our clients. So in order to accomplish our goal, we need to train end users to be a little bit more savvy in what to be aware of for security reasons. Your feedback. We do want feedback and input for future topics. Please add your questions to the chat in the webinar today. The goal of these obviously is to make you more secure. So if you have any feedback on topics you'd like to hear for a future session, we'd love to hear your feedback. Once we accomplish our goals, hopefully we can find a more fun topic to talk about in the future. Phishing. So our focus today is phishing. And we hear a lot of time in meeting with clients, what's new with phishing? The reality of it is not really much has changed. The hackers have basically found different tweaks in how they can social engineer end users to do things that they want them to do. Hackers continue to change their methods and how they respond to new security measures that are put in place. This is a little bit of the evolution we've seen since 2017. So initially, people were presented bogus login pages to log into like a fake Microsoft account. Well, the way we protected people from that was implementing MFA. Users weren't aware, but they were basically giving away their passwords, allowing people to log into their account. So we implemented MFA. Last year was the year of the MFA fatigue attack. Basically, what was occurring is the criminals were doing things to trick users into approving their MFA requests. They're called push bombs. So basically, the goal was to get the end user to either approve like an app approval or to approve a phone call method for MFA login to their account. Obviously, the protection to do this is obviously having MFA in place and better educated end users. This year, we've actually seen the bogus branded login pages. The goal obviously is to convince people they're logging into their accounts when they're not. Users give away their passwords, and after they have the passwords, then they push bomb MFA prompts to the user to get them to approve the login. Obviously, the protection for this is MFA being in place and better educated end users. Microsoft comes to the rescue with number matching. This is a new method of MFA. We implemented this for customers this year. But number matching isn't the end-all be-all for security. We've actually, since implementing number matching, we've actually seen somebody fall victim to push bombing with number matching MFA. So with number matching MFA, the device or app that's looking to authenticate generates a 2-digit code, and you enter that code into your app on your Apple or your Android phone. Well, in this example that we're going to share today, the end user basically was tricked by the hacker. The hacker gave them the 2-digit code they had, and that the end user used that 2-digit code to enter it into their MFA on their phone. The best defense for this is to be skeptical and slow down. So in the example of what we saw a few weeks back, a user was expecting a DocuSign email. They had multiple bogus DocuSign emails that were sent to them. They were anxiously awaiting a DocuSign email. They did receive the DocuSign email, but the one that they interacted with wasn't the one they were expecting. So what we want to talk about is the warning signs in this example of a DocuSign email. First and foremost, were you expecting a DocuSign email? If you weren't, it may not be a legitimate request. Do you recognize the sender? So the sender with a DocuSign email, it always comes from the same address. In this case, you might be able to see that the address isn't coming from DocuSign, and we'll show you that here in another slide. Are the links in the DocuSign message legit? And again, we're going to show you that in a future slide. Is there anything that might be misspelled or fishy? So again, we need people to be kind of skeptical of what they're seeing. So here's the screen of what an end user saw. There's the phishing message or the fake DocuSign message on the left, and there's the legitimate DocuSign email on the right. The legitimate DocuSign email comes from a DocuSign email address, so DocuSign.net. The one on the left basically was an email address, but in front of the email address, they spoofed it to say docu space via sign completed. We did block out the email address, but there was an email address to the right of that. If you receive DocuSigns on a regular basis, then the first contact safety tip would be there to protect you. So if it's the first time you got an email from somebody, the first contact tip says you don't get email from this email address frequently, or if you've never got an email from this address before. So the goal of that is to help you identify this. So in this case, if you've received DocuSign messages previously, that first contact safety message wouldn't be there because you would have received DocuSign messages previously. So in this case, it was coming from an email address, but the end user missed that. You can inspect the links for the DocuSign message by hovering over the message in your email. So if you hover over the message that's in your email, you would see the legitimate DocuSign says DocuSign.net, which is a DocuSign email address. The one on the left, what you're seeing shows the safe links, which we use Defender for Office 365. So the initial URL you're going to see is safelinks.protection.outlook.com. But what the end user didn't notice is that was a prefix to the actual URL. So in the actual phishing message that they got, the domain that was serving that up was track.affiliation.com servlet, not the DocuSign email address. Another thing to be looking for is the disclaimer in the DocuSign email. The disclaimer on the left message, the fake message, actually had a financial disclaimer on it and not an actual DocuSign reference. So DocuSign actually, with a legitimate DocuSign, it does contain references to alternate methods for signing in, to get access to your DocuSign message. So there's a few things before we wrap up for the Q&A session and just some general tips for email and online safety. We do highly recommend multi-factor authentication for all personal accounts, all personal email accounts, and any other online accounts you have. If you use a TDS or Charter email, for example, those email accounts do not support modern authentication. So for your personal email, we'd recommend you switch over to an Outlook.com, a Gmail.com, or a Yahoo.com email, for example, because they support multi-factor authentication. We want to remind people they shouldn't reuse their passwords. We want to encourage people to slow down and be cautious. Check the URL. Look but don't click. Avoid clicking on links and emails to your bank, credit card company, or other online accounts. It's better for you to actually type in that URL and go to the website versus clicking a link in an email. Check for spelling mistakes that might exist in that email. Now, with the advent of ChatGPT, and I don't know if many of you are using ChatGPT, but with that as a tool, obviously the criminals have started to use that to create better crafted phishing messages. So maybe the spelling mistakes won't be as obvious in the future. People do need to be aware of urgent or threatening language when they're communicating, because that's usually what the social engineering is meant to do, is meant to trick people into acting. You should review the signature line. Is it legit? And you should check for the built-in features that we have. So we have the external email warning to help you identify if it's somebody spoofing somebody internal to your business. And we have the first contact safety tip to acknowledge if it's the first time you've got an email address from that, or first time you got an email from that email address. You also want to take the time to verify if one of your applications on your device is actually prompting you for the MFA prompt.